Hey YouTube, this is Nashtaters. Welcome back to another episode of WOTV Visions. I think today's episode I want to talk about something that is perhaps a right time, and given the fact that we already know exactly what we're expecting to get for Christmas, essentially the next few weeks is pretty much what we're going to be occupied with. Therefore, this year of 2020 is essentially finished. Now perhaps I could be doing this video, in the beginning of next year, but I feel like this is a good time to actually talk about what's been going on in this very eventful 2020 year. A couple of announcements. First off, I am going to be starting a Discord. Essentially what it is going to be a channel in my guild's Discord, and I will invite people to come in if they want to give me suggestions, perhaps for topics for conversations or topics for videos for this channel. And of course, if you want to just come in and chat about different things, or if you have questions regarding anything in the game itself, my guildies are very good in terms of perhaps helping me answer some questions if I can't answer those questions myself. So we're working on that, getting established. So as soon as that is finished, I will go ahead and make another announcement and give you guys access to that channel. Another announcement is I decided I don't think I'm really going to work on Rosa that much. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Rosa perhaps to just enough to get all the free shards. I think what this essentially means is the game wants me to tie up a lot of my resources in order to get her to a point where I can get all those free shards. It's a very smart move on their part, I realize, but I don't think I'm willing to spend too many gems to really make her a level 99, because I don't really think I need her at this point. Maybe I'm thinking of going to maybe 75 so I can have access to everything, and I think that's where I'm going to stop. But we still have a whole week left to see how many shards I can actually farm, and we'll see what happens there. So let's talk about 2020. The year's coming to an end. I think overall has been a very eventful year. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, I see a lot of the folks from those eras starting to reach the end of their life, reach the end of their journey. And it's unfortunate some folks have been actually taken away from us a lot sooner than they should have been, right? Kobe Bryant, obviously, and his daughter, met a tragic end in the beginning of the year. And subsequently, we received a pandemic. And then over the course of months, we have seen countless folks from the 80s and 90s pass away. And it's just been a very odd year, right? And I think going forward, we're going to be adjusting to a brand new life, a life where we're living amidst a big pandemic. And although perhaps this pandemic hasn't really hit our lifetime as hard as perhaps previous pandemics, nevertheless, it's making our life a little bit more difficult than before. You probably see a lot more folks working at home. You see a lot more folks taking more precautions with their travels and daily affairs and whatnot. And overall, it's just been a very odd year for sure. I think one could actually say, even though I don't like to say this too often, but out of negative things, usually we can get positive things, right? Because some people might view that statement as something, not good, right? Why are you looking at these things when you should be, trying to rectify the negatives? But I feel like, life is all about trying to make the best out of everything. And although I have personally suffered a personal loss in my life due to the pandemic, the COVID-19, and I'm pretty sure a lot of folks out there have suffered personal losses. And to that, I want to give everybody my condolences. But I think sometimes we have to rise from the ashes and become stronger, and hopefully be more thankful for all the things that we do have in life. I've always emphasized and stressed on the idea that life is short, time is valuable, and you should always spend it wisely. And I still stick to that. I think it makes perfect sense. I think given the situation of the pandemic, War of the Visions turned out to be one of the better games that came out of 2020. And I think Gumi and Square Enix, even though there were some hiccups along the way, have done an extraordinary job in terms of presenting us a great product. And I think I want to talk about some of the great things about War of Visions, maybe mention a few of the negatives as well. I think the most important thing is War of the Visions is a fine product from the get-go, right? A sort of a reminiscence of Final Fantasy Tactics, build upon the skeletons of the Alchemist Code. And for those of you who played Alchemist Code, you realize that years into this journey, we started seeing a lot more hiccups than necessary. I feel like currently War of the Visions is still offering an exceptional product. The companies have done an extraordinary job in terms of updating things and fixing bugs and things of that nature. And I think overall, I think it's a product I will continue to support. Personally, one of the most important things I love about this game is the diversity of the units. One thing I would emphasize is that War of the Visions is not a hero collector, although it could seem that way. You know, sometimes the gacha system kind of forcibly give you almost every unit in the game. And for the most part, it's one of those games where you don't necessarily need to build and rely on every single unit. Ideally, you should be nitpicking units that suit your playing style and perhaps something that you only need for specific situations. So I think overall, people are learning that you don't need to think about collecting every unit or building every unit. Most likely, by the time that every unit is released, the chances of everyone owning every unit is quite high. But the key decision making in this game is really making sure that you spend your resources wisely and not invest in every single unit presented to you. Another thing I really enjoy about this game is espers. I think one of the key flagships to Final Fantasy games are the summoners, right? The summoning beasts, whatever you want to call them. In this game, they call them espers. There's a very good diversity in terms of these beings, and I think ultimately the designs of a lot of these beings is pretty cool. And I think we have seen the grid system, you know, times and times over in Final Fantasy games. And I think they've done an exceptional job in making this game work with the grid system. And personally, I'm a big fan of it because this allows you to have a lot of customization. I think that's the whole point of this game. It's a strategy game. So I think they did a very good job with that as well. And I think the vision cards is kind of bland in the sense that a lot of games do it nowadays. By adding a little supplementing part to the game itself, it offers, you know, more chances of gaining stats. But I think the companies did a good job in terms of the design. Even though this concept isn't, you know, new or anything, but I think their spin on it, their take on it is actually very good and very acceptable. I think one of the most important things in games, such as Final Fantasy games or any RPGs, of course, are reliance on the equipment. And this game actually done a pretty good job in terms of tiering out their weapons and gear. I think the UR qualities, the MR qualities, things of that nature, they've done a pretty good job in terms of giving us access to them. The only thing obviously I will mention later will be the negatives about how poorly designed the actual crafting system is. Like any good solid RPG on mobile, gacha is pretty much essential nowadays, right? And I know it's one of those love it, hate it relationships. And personally, I think this game, obviously, as I mentioned before in my review video, that this game has done a pretty good job in terms of offering things that perhaps other games don't offer. And that is the shard system. Now, some people might dislike it, but I personally feel like it's a good system, right? It really teaches you to micromanage your account. It teaches you to invest wisely. And it teaches you not to heavily rely on the banners, the summoners, or some people call them hatchers. Overall, I think the shard system really complements the idea of a gacha system plus a unit building system. I think all the little offerings in this game have, such as the Chocobo Expedition, the item exchange shop, the mog shop, the shop itself, and then of course things like you can gain from events. They're all been pretty good, and I think overall I don't have too many complaints. My favorite thing about this game is the fact that the collaborations are very good. So far, they've done a pretty good job with all the collaborations, and definitely that is my favorite. And of course, I love Final Fantasy Tactics. So if I was to sit here and give you all of my favorite units of 2020, I would have to say almost all of them, right? Because I love Final Fantasy Tactics. As you can see, I have 4 out of the 5 units that they offered already. I have Warrior of Light, I have Little Leela, which is the Halloween version. Of course, I got Kane, I got Rosa, and I think ultimately I'm gonna pass this time around on the Christmas units, but in the future, I would definitely look forward to perhaps getting Christmas Mashity because she looks pretty cute, and overall, I'm really kind of liking spear users in this game more and more. And so I think the game itself is very well designed in terms of the units, right? Very good art, very good animation. And I played a lot of gacha games, and one thing I can't stand is the chibi or the kibi look. You know, where they have squishy units and their heads all big and they look very like anime or maybe like cartoonish. This game goes all out on their art, and they don't cheap you by, you know, giving you a crappy version of the unit in terms of the 3D effect units that you see it on the battlefield. You know, you see a lot of games where they concentrate a lot of their work on the actual art. You know, the ones you see when you're looking at your units or you're looking at your box. But when you start playing the game, the design looks terrible. But this game does an exceptional job on both sides. Think about the story. I'm not really a huge fan of it because I don't sit there and read all the text, because most of the stuff, it's very boring, right? And that was one thing about Final Fantasy Tactics. It kind of started getting convoluted with the politics and the religion and all that stuff. And you know, when you were younger, you didn't really think too much about it because you had a hard time following it. I think this game has so many kingdoms and people jumping here, running there. I kind of didn't really follow up too much. But from the consensus of the community, most people think the story is very simple and very plain. But other than that, I don't have a whole lot to say about it. Now let's talk about the negatives in this game. And although there were some, I don't think most of them are that bothersome to me. The big ones obviously has been the issues about mistrust in the system, mistrust in the companies about whether or not the banners are rigged. Personally, I always felt that most companies most likely do something with their banners, because you have to think that, you know, their whole goal is to make money, right? So you can't help to have that little conspiracy theory in the back of your mind. And it is what it is, and either you can accept it or you can simply walk away. And personally, this game is good enough where you don't have to actually summon if you choose not to. The game tends to give you lots of free summons as is, and for those who are spenders, most likely they don't care because they're going to get the unit and it doesn't really matter how much it costs them. So I think that's something we can kind of set to aside until perhaps it pops up in the future. Like I said, the most important thing I hate about this game is the crafting system. We're going to hopefully get that rectified on Wednesday when you're allowed to actually craft things with one hit of a button. I can't wait for that. Other things I really don't like is the fact that they probably progress a little too fast. And the 1 year anniversary mark in JP, they did introduce the EX Job 25. I was very skeptical, and honestly, I wanted to kind of step back and kind of wait and see what happens, wait for the dust to settle type of deal. But overall, I thought about it, right? How badly could they really screw it up? And so far, they have proven people that they actually did a pretty good job with it. I think the only thing people don't like about it was that fact it was introduced perhaps in many people's minds a little too early. Other than that, I don't really have too many nitpicks of this game. It is grindy and it is a lot of auto farming, but when you do spend the time to manual your team, it just makes me feel good. You know, when I see the units buff, when I see the animations, when I see them engaging, when I see I'm able to complete a PvE content using my strategies rather than watching someone else's video or going to some sort of guide and relying on other people's tactics. And I think ultimately that's what makes this game will have a potential long life, because it tends to cater to the idea that your strategies, if it works, means that you're very, you feel really good about yourself and you feel really good about how you approach the game. And overall, I think this is definitely, in my opinion, the best product, the best thing that came out of 2020 in terms of gaming. Hopefully 2021 we'll see a lot more features, perhaps that will make quality of life even better. Hopefully we'll see maybe a little bit slowing down in terms of progression of the game itself. I mean, what I mean by that is obviously, like, I don't want to see more level cap increases. I'm hoping we don't see another level cap increase perhaps in 2022. But that's my hopes, right? Hopefully we'll get more interesting units. Maybe we'll get more super collaborations like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VII and things of that nature. My personal pick is going to be Final Fantasy 12. But we're going to see what happens. So far, we already got Final Fantasy 10. So, that's crossing my fingers, right? So, what do you guys think? What do you guys love about World of Visions in 2020? And what did you guys hate about 2020 World of Visions? Or if you want to insert anything about life in general as well, feel free to put in the comment section below. Remember, time is your most valuable resource, so spend it wisely. And if you do enjoy my content and you do enjoy my videos, please hit that subscribe button. We're really trying to push for 1,000 subscribers so I can have more access to the tools that YouTube has given me. or going to give me. And as always, take care of yourself and all your loved ones. Nashtaters and his family out of here. Happy holidays.